I just want.
And so precious. I'm gonna
She
tell her.
is, isn't
I'm
she?
gonna tell her and say you got a beauty. Precious.
She is. She is always so happy and smiling. It's a shame she couldn't even like teach and sit on a stool or something. Wouldn't you?
Well, I think what happened is, I mean, she was out for a year and then she on disability. So the terms of the disability were that she couldn't teach again. So she, but she did another job. She worked with infants, special needs infants. So it was a good thing here.
Good morning.
For me, I'm sure.
It'll be all right. It'll be all right.
I don't know. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry. They wanted to talk to you.
Oh, okay.
Work outside the home.
I retired 6 years ago.
Oh, okay. What did you do?
I was a legal assistant.
Okay.
In the last 21 years, I was with the city.
Hey, Gary.
I moved here about 40 years ago. And so the first 12 years, I worked for a private law firm. I was there for over 20 years.
See what it is.
You had to know all that legal jargon.
Yeah.
Probably about 22, because I'm covering sound booth today for David.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, brother.
Yes.
Morning, Bill.
So, yeah, Bill,
Hit record.
I did. For those of you who were here last week, you may remember towards the end of the class, Bill announced that he wasn't going to be here. He and Sherry are out of town.
Larry. I lost sound. I'm not getting any sound from you guys. I know we started out, I had it, but
How about now?
oh, thank you.
Let there be sound.
The little audio button on the tab there had a big red slash through it.
Ah,
So I don't know how that happened, but audio was off.
thank you.
So we're going to go over, does anybody remember what the definition of? It is being recorded, Jack, so maybe you can go back and rewatch the first 6 or 8 minutes of it.
I can do that.
Get the introduction, so sorry about that.
Larry, when you first said garden, you didn't specify. I was thinking you were talking about the Garden of Gethsemane.
Oh, okay. No, well, that happened in John. I'm talking about the first 3 chapters.
I know, now I do.
John.
Because some of the things that you were talking about earlier about prayer were
You know what? That's a great point.
example was in the Garden of Gethsemane.
That's a great point. I had not even considered that, but, yeah, it's interesting there. I bet if we put those 2 accounts of the Garden of Gethsemane and the Garden of Eden side by side, we could probably find a lot of parallels there. I'm guessing. I've never done that exercise before, but that might be a worthy exercise. Okay. So in the Garden of Eden, we are most fully human. The state in which God originally created us is the state in which he wanted and wants us to exist, to live and breathe and be in his creation, right? Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So in that state is when we are most fully human. We are most like who he wants us to be. Okay. We walk with him. And I know some of you immediately had, and we talk with him. I mean, he tells, right? That's not where I'm going, but that's okay. But we walk with him. We do talk with him, and we hear from him. And the problem that happened in Genesis 3, what we commonly refer to as the fall, is that sin entered the world. Sin, we all know what the word integrate means, right? Integration is when you bring multiple things together and kind of make them cohesive. You make them as one. Sin disintegrates that relationship. Okay? Prayer, our active engagement with God, reintegrates. Okay? Prayer is an integral part of our restoration back to who God wants us to be, and our sanctification, which is him making us holy, which is again back to who he wants us to be. So the more time and attention we give to God, the more time we spend with him. Now listen, this is no different than any other relationship, is it? You can't strengthen a relationship by separation.
Right.
Now, I know the old saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? And there may be something to the desire. When Holly and I are separated, you know, if I'm out of town on business or whatever it is, you know, it makes me want to be with her back home in her presence. But that's not a strengthening of the relationship necessarily. The strengthening of any relationship can only occur when there is time spent together. So I have often heard it said over the years, especially in a parenting context, that, quality time is more important than quantity time. And I think that's a bogus take. Because you can only have quantity time if there is, you can only have quality time if there is quantity of time. Okay? So, and I think that from a parenting perspective, from a husband and wife perspective, and most importantly, from a believer with God perspective, quality time is the precursor. I'm sorry, I'll get this right. Quantity time is the precursor to quality time.
Just like dating,
Pardon?
just like when you're dating.
Yeah, 100%.
Just like when you're dating.
You don't get that quality time with that person that you're.
Engaged with until you have time together, quantity time.
That's right. That's exactly right. So the more time and attention we give to God, the more we are restored and made holy. The more we are able to be transformed back into his image, back into the image in which we were originally created. Okay? So that's kind of foundational for where we're going to go here. One of the questions and the questions, comments, whatever it was, that during that class, we had talked a couple of different times.
The questions, comment, check it out.
Check it out.
Is that Chat GPT spying on us and trying to? That's funny. At least somebody's listening.
There you go.
One of the subjects that came up at least a couple of times was based on a statement that Paul made to the Thessalonian church, the end of 1 Thessalonians in chapter 5. He says, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and in everything give thanks. And we had discussions about what does it really mean to pray without ceasing. Anybody remember we talked about that maybe once or twice? Okay. And the idea is that, it's physically impossible. I mean, let's be real. It's physically impossible for us to walk around all the time in prayer. Okay. As individuals, that's just something that, that's the reality, right? Now, so it's possible. I'm going to offer a couple of different things for your consideration here in the context of praying without ceasing. Because again, got a gnat. Again, this is the idea of spending more time in the presence of God, right? If we can pray without ceasing, pray without ever stopping, that means we're always in the presence of God. So a couple of ideas for your consideration. Paul also at the end of the Ephesian letter, chapter 6, we're familiar with the armor of God little section there where he talks about that. At the end of that, he says, pray at all times, which is different than pray all the time. Okay? Pray at all times means whenever something is going on, you're going to talk to God about it. Again, pray at all times is different than pray all the time. It's different than pray without ceasing. They're very close, of course, right? But they're not exactly the same. So what I want us just to consider, and we can even talk about this for a minute, maybe it'd be worthy of a conversation. In the Thessalonian letter, and especially in this part when he says pray without ceasing, open your Bibles to 1 Thessalonians real quick. I want you to be able to put your eyes on this and so you guys can maybe help me work through this.
Quick comment, Larry. I think now that I wasn't a part of your class, but hearing your definition of prayer, the pray without ceasing, pray continually. We tend to think that it's say continually. I'm talking the entire time, but our definition says we're engaged in that presence of God.
Yes.
There is a part of that we're listening as well, or hearing,
Yes.
either one.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. And so we're going to come on this here in a minute because I'm going to get to Paul's other statement in Colossians where he says, set your minds on things above, right? All right, so that's a great point. All right, everybody in 1 Thessalonians 5? All right, beginning in verse 12. But we request of you, brethren, right? That's New American Standard. Who has an NIV? How does the first part of verse 12 begin?
Now we ask you, brothers, to respect those.
Okay, we ask you, brothers. Who has an ESV? Holly, how's it begin?
Same as Troy's.
Okay. I want to submit for your consideration that Paul's statement to pray without ceasing is not necessarily meant as an instruction for individuals, but that it may be instruction for the congregation. Okay? Because the beginning of this little part of this letter, and really, I mean, the whole letter is written to the church in Thessaloniki, right? So again, I want you to spend some time thinking about that. And Gary and Richard, as elders, I think it's worthy of our consideration to think about what this means from a congregational standpoint. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit more into this here in just a moment. Okay, so another consideration here. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus in chapter 6, Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Did he not? Everybody familiar with that statement? Okay. Seek first. Numero uno. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Wouldn't it have been so much easier if Jesus would have said, whenever you've got time in your busy schedule, why don't you maybe consider thinking about God sometime?
Oh.
No.
That would have been a lot easier, wouldn't it? But that's not what he said. He said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And by the way, all these other things will be added. All these other things you're worried about, right? What am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? What am I going to wear? All those other things, they'll be added to you. Okay? Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. There's a word, our English word that we use that has really gotten diluted over the last, really in the last century, but even more so in maybe the last 20, 30, 40 years. And it's the word priority. The word priority, our English word, comes from the Latin word prioritas. It means the first or preceding thing. It's the thing that happens before anything else happens. And it is absolutely critical for us to understand that that word is singular. We can only have one priority in our life. And when I said that it has gotten diluted over the years, because now it's all about priorities. And the word priorities is actually an oxymoron. Everybody know what that is? Right? It's
Contradiction in terms.
a contradiction in terms. And I will offer you an exception to this here in just a second. The idea that we can have priorities means that we've got a whole bunch of different things that take first place in our life.
Hmm.
That's what makes it an oxymoron, right?
Mhm.
There can only be one first thing in our life. Jesus tells us what it should be. Many years ago, is everybody familiar with the real estate firm Keller Williams? Right? They're a massive nationwide real estate brokerage and agency and all that. The Keller of Keller Williams wrote a book a number of years ago called The One Thing. And in that book, he essentially is saying the same thing, that there can only be one thing. And he breaks it down into different silos in your life, if you will, right? So you can only have one thing in your spiritual life. You can only have one priority, right? That's what he's talking about. The one thing is the one priority. You can have one thing in your spiritual life, one thing in your family life, one thing in your professional life, and so forth. But at the end, and I think there's some validity to that conversation. But at the end of the day, when it comes to our life, there can still only be one priority. Here's the thing. We get to pick what it is. You get to pick what is the priority in your life. Is it your job? Is it making money? Is it growing fat stacks? Right? Is it, you can obviously tell for me, it's not bodybuilding, it's not physical fitness, right? But for some people it is, right? There are so many things that take precedence, that take the first place in our mind and in our activities throughout the day. To be fully human, to be the most like God, like he wants us to be, like he created us to be, the only option for our priority is seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness. There are no other options. If there were, Jesus would have given them to us, right? He would have let us choose if there were multiple good options. But I think it's consistent with his character, with his teaching, with his life, with everything. You know, he even said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. We seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. An absolutely critical part of doing that is spending time with God. Troy, and then
Sort of a side note. You're using the word, I'm not criticizing it, but you're using the word human in a way that most people don't use it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you're using it in a way that's exactly opposite of the way
that's right.
most people use it. I just wanted to point that out because I don't want any confusion there, because going back to the beginning, you're defining human as the way God intended originally for us to be. Whereas most of the time when we say the word human, we say, oh, I'm only human. That means I, mess up all the time,
Yeah, there's a song, Christine Perry or somebody, there's a song it's within the last few years, but I'm only human. I bleed when I fall down. She's talking about all the weaknesses and frailties of her humanity, right? And I don't know a whole lot about the song, but I just know there's another one by I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Who is that? That wasn't Jelly Roll. I can't remember who it was. You guys know Jelly Roll?
Yeah.
Okay. Who was it that sang that song? I can't remember. Anyway, all right, Cheryl, sorry.
was just thinking that with all those different categories that he's talking about, the priority, that one priority, though, is what needs to influence all
Yes.
those other things.
Yes,
And if that's in place, everything else is gonna, you know,
yeah.
where it needs to be.
That's right. That's right. So if you want to think of it like as the umbrella that covers all these other things, right? But, and if we do that, which I think is the right thing for us to do, that means whatever we put as the first thing in these other categories of our life, they're actually the second thing. They're not the priority, right?
It's got to come first and then everything else comes under.
That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your, both of those comments here. Stacey.
So I heard years ago, I don't remember who said this, but it kind of stayed in my mind. Priority, the center of your life.
Yeah.
When I grew up, it was like, what's first? What's at the top? What's
Yeah.
like on the ladder, so to speak? Who's first?
Sure.
When I heard it spoke as, is he in the center of your life?
Oh.
At the heart,
Yeah,
which is what matters
yeah,
when you boil down to it.
yeah.
You can do all you want to do outwardly, but your heart,
Yeah,
if it's not in it, that's what matters, right? So that, like, if he's in the center of what I try to do each day, then he's gonna be part or in everything that I do,
yeah.
whatever it may be.
I think that's a great visual, actually, when you think about it. And even when you were explaining it, you were doing like this, right? As opposed to top down, right? When he is at the center with us in the life that we're living on our short time on earth, then I think that's right. So everything, so even going back to Cheryl's point, the different silos, right? So that the top of the ladder fits more with the silo part, right? When we've got these categories, but I like it better maybe like that because,
Don't get me wrong, he should be first.
yeah.
But when I visualize it myself as him being in the center of me,
Right,
he's in me. I'm in his presence. He's in me.
right.
You get what I'm saying? So that way.
Yeah, it's almost like, he's living in us and we're living in him or something. If that's not in the Bible, that should be. So,
Well,
yeah.
what does your human heart do?
Well,
But
we want to look at the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the boastful pride of life and yeah,
the physical heart,
yeah.
it pumps the blood, goes
Oh.
all through your body and comes back.
Okay,
But because it's just a pump.
yeah,
But with God, that's the power. But if your heart stops,
yeah. Very good. All right, Troy?
Sort of springboarding off what Stacy was saying. The idea of having God in the center, the alternative to that is when we think that, well, I don't want to divorce myself from God totally, but I want to have moderation in all things. So God ends up being one of the peripheral items
Yes.
on the outside. We put ourselves in the center. And then, yeah, if you look at someone like that, who has that model, yeah, there will be maybe, there's some element of spirituality there, but it's not the controlling force. And it doesn't touch all of the elements of your life.
Okay. This even goes back to the Garden of Eden. The great deception that the serpent played was that he convinced them that on the day that you eat of this fruit, you will be like God. And which goes to putting us in the center now and making God one of these, right? One of the things that, and listen, this is a whole nother conversation. But it's a really, really good one. And at the end of the day, when we do what we want to do and not what God wants us to do? Listen closely to this. When we do what we want to do as opposed to what God wants us to do, we are making ourselves God of our life. In that moment, that's what we're doing. Because we are saying, again, not consciously, but we are saying that I know what's best for me. And even if I don't know what's best for me, I know what I want to be doing, right? And I am in control of my life. Therefore, I'm going to do what I want to do. We do not submit to the will of God. We elevate the will of ourself, right? So again, bringing this back to spending time in the presence of God. Listen, do you think, let's think about the class, the Revelation class for a second. Do you think if we were in heaven, in the presence of God, seeing him on his throne, think back to the picture that John paints in the Revelation of the presence of God. Do you think for 1 second that you would want to say, yeah, this is nice, but I'm going to go over here and do my own thing? There is no way. Right? Or think of Isaiah chapter 6 when he has his vision and he sees the Lord on his throne and the robe, covers over the earth, and they're is it cherubim or seraphim? The cherubim, holy, they're circling over the throne, and holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, and the whole earth is full of his glory. Yeah, that's cool, Isaiah, but I'm going to go over here and do what I want to do. When we spend time with God, we will not be able to help ourselves by doing what he wants us to do. Because the more time we spend in his presence, the more in awe of him we will be. And you want to know what the cure for all ails are? It's knowing God. It's knowing God. That doesn't mean that we can fix all the problems, but we can at least have some insight. We can, Paul says, we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of the Spirit, he says, right? So, okay, I can start preaching here if I'm not already. So Sherry, you had something?
Yeah, just a practical piece of it. Throughout our day, we make decisions every day. And it tells us what our priority is. You know, the things we choose for activities, things we choose for friendships outside of, confidence. Our decisions that we make every day, if we stop and analyze them, it tells what our priority is.
Yes. So in the business world, some of you may have heard this before, in the especially in the entrepreneurial world, there's this idea, I don't know where it originated, but if you show me your calendar, I can show you your bank account. Right? Because what's the idea there? The idea is that wherever you're investing your time, wherever you're spending your time, I can tell you if it's contributing to your wealth and success or if it's not. And similarly, if you show me your top 5 friends, I can show you your bank account. Because again, who is it that you're spending the most time with? Because they are going to directly influence and impact that part of wealth, right? So the same thing, and maybe even more appropriately applies to what we're talking about here, right? And listen, if you looked at my calendar over the years, I would be embarrassed as it relates to what we're talking about here. Because I know, I just know, right? So that leads us into the next subject here. We only got a few minutes, but man, this is so good. And I really, really appreciate your involvement in the class this morning. A couple of different times, Paul uses the phrase set your mind, especially in the Colossian letter. Beginning chapter 3, he says, set your minds on things above. This idea of setting your mind. This is again a priority conversation. Set your minds on things above is what is it that you are determined to do, regardless of what happens. In Luke, this whole idea came from the class Wednesday night. What was the name of the brother that taught that was here Wednesday night? Does anybody know? Byron? Yeah. He was teaching out of Philippians, which is what they've been in, the guest speakers have been talking about on Wednesday nights. And in the Philippian letter, Paul was writing about how those who were opposed to Christ had set their minds on earthly things. So everything they were doing was all about what's happening in the world, right? And it immediately prompted this thought in my head about Jesus in Luke chapter 9 and verse 51. It says that Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. He was determined to go to Jerusalem, and there was not a thing in the world that was going to stop him. All right? So when Paul says for us to set our minds on things above, he is saying you must be resolute. You must be, again, what is the singular priority in your life? Right? And now I hope you're beginning to understand when I say singular priority, that's a redundancy, right? Because it can't be a priority unless it is singular, right? Am I driving that nail, right?
Mhm.
Okay. When we set our minds, we become people who actually pray, not just people who like prayer. Notice that distinction? Okay? When we set our minds on things above, we become people who actually pray, not just people who like prayer. All right, 5 minutes. I want to introduce this historical. I've got a lot more in my outline here, but we're going to wrap it up with this. In 1727, Saxony, area known as Saxony, which is in the eastern part of what we know today as Germany. There was a Count Nicholas Ludwig von Zinzendorf. That's actually his name. He had an estate, and there were a group of Christian refugees, 40, I think the count was 43. And he opened his estate and welcomed them onto his property. This ended up becoming a community referred to as Herrenhut, German, what now in Germany. This group of 40-something people, over the course of just the first 5 years, so this 1722 is when that welcoming happened. 1727, they launched. Now, this was after a spiritual renewal that came about as a single night of them confessing to one another. Because there had been some tension and some conflict and some friction among that small group. As tends to happen sometime when you've got, people living that closely together. They got together one night and as a group confessed their sins to one another And I'm guessing that was about how they had been mistreating each other specifically within that context. 2 weeks after that night of confession, they began round the clock prayer, 24/7, 7 days a week, 360. That's what 24/7 is, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in 1 hour shifts. So they would sign up for, they would, different people, 1 hour shifts, 24/7, 365. This went on from that little group for over 100 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, look it up. Wikipedia, Google, whatever your right, your resource of choice is. Out of that sprang, before there were ever missions groups, missions organizations, right? Any of that kind of, before any denomination had any kind of like official missional group or effort. They ended up sending over the course of that 100 years, dozens of missionaries to all corners of the world. It's commonly referred to in scholarly circles, not that I'm a scholar, but I'm familiar with the circles anyway. It's commonly referred to as the Moravian missionary movement. Ordinary believers who sent and were sent globally, shaping the history of how we now experience the evangelical church. And here's where, this is what's interesting, because we're in the middle of a series and an idea on evangelism, right? This did not start as an evangelistic strategy. It started with a shared presence of God, with unceasing prayer. The mission, the evangelism, was a byproduct. It was a fruit of that effort. And I think there's something important and valuable for us to take from that example. So that's the second bell? Okay. I want to recast. I'll do this very quickly. I want to recast this idea of praying without ceasing, that it is maybe a congregational relay rather than a solo marathon. Okay? And I'm going to encourage you to offer a short, hear me, I know you've got to go pick up kids. Listen to me if you can, just for a second. Give me your attention. I want to encourage you all every morning to offer a short prayer, a setting your face or setting your mind kind of prayer each morning. And it can be this simple, this short. Father, I seek your kingdom and your righteousness first. Align my heart and open a door for your word today. You'll start your day with that. I would not be surprised to see amazing things happen in your life individually and in our life as a congregation. And with that, I say thank you and go get your cheering. Thank you.
Very good, Larry. Very good.
Yes.